In higher ed, we're all looking for big wins, but reducing a 75% application abandonment rate and achieving a 90% conversion rate, that's next level transformation. Michael Battersworth, CMO at Texas State Technical College, shares how they achieved this by streamlining the application process with Element 451.
Our Element journey began out of a necessity. We were switching to a new SIS, and the application process was going to pose some real usability issues for us. We felt that application was going to hamper our enrollment. So we began quickly to evaluate different CRMs, different applications. So for context on that, our conversion rate with the prior application had about 75% abandonment of people clicking apply to submit. And the first weeks after going live with Element, we saw an 80% conversion, and that's now up to 90%. So improving the usability of that application on the front-end process has had a significant advance in our intake.
When technology works for students, it works for you. Visit element451.com to see how simplifying the application process with artificial intelligence will lead to significant results for your institution. Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Higher Ed Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 271, with Dan and Cristina from Collegis Education and Augusta University, respectively. So we are talking about the DIY Plus initiative at Augusta University that helped to spawn and expand and improve upon the Augusta University Online offerings there, kind of a internal OPM, the online program management effort that Augusta University was able to do in partnership with Collegis. So we're getting kind of both perspectives. Always a nice treat to have two folks on for one episode to get both of their kind of insights on this topic as we're kind of picking up the pieces, from traditional OPM models starting to kind of fade away from kind of their sort of outsized place in the spotlight. Now we're seeing kind of fee-for-service models and different things kind of popping up, and just really appreciate them kind of going in depth into kind of the whole story of this unique way that they are undertaking, creating, increased online enrollments at Augusta University and doing it in a really thoughtful and strategic way, and really just utilizing kind of the best in market and kind of best practices to digital education today. So really do appreciate both of them being on, sharing all that they did, and sit back and enjoy this episode number 271 with Dan and Cristina from Collegis and Augusta University. So I'm really excited for our conversation today, talking about sort of really a very specific manifestation of how digital transformation is impacting institutions today. The partnership between Augusta University and Collegis Education, where the DIY Plus initiative, I'll let you, Cristina, kind of explain more about it and how it came to be. But I'm just really excited to kind of have this very kind of specific example to sort of examine to help kind of model the way and help, hopefully, you can kind of motivate and inspire other folks in this space to kind of see what's possible when you're leveraging like a great partner and, bringing together just a really great kind of perspective and expertise to kind of elevate our kind of digital education offerings and everything. So, Cristina, if you want to kick us off, just what was the impetus of Augusta University's online partnership with Collegis?
Sure. Thank you, Dustin. So when you think of DIY Plus, the one thing that we really had to focus on at AU Online when we started was that we were not going to go with an OPM model. And luckily, we had a clean slate. We were able to build from the ground up, and Collegis was there right from the beginning. So our first step was assessing what the university already had in place in terms of technology. And what we found is that we really had the right mix of technologies. It was pretty impressive to see how much technology we had, but it wasn't integrated properly. So there were lots of gaps, and we really needed to figure out how to fill those gaps. So just to give an example, particularly with one, looking at the marketing for conversion oriented processes, there were no Google Analytics tracking in the Slate application portal. So when you look at that as a marketer, I was like, oh no, how am I going to know where my students are coming from? So there was a lot of foundational work to do in terms of data collection. And that's when we turned to Collegis. It was really exciting, the first 2-day meeting that we had, because, Dan came in and he came in with a blank whiteboard. And what we did was we essentially just listened to everybody. We just listened. And one of the main key individuals in that room was our AVP of IT and Deputy CIO. And we just really just listened to them. So it was sort of saying, again, like, we're going to build a house, but we need to know what tools we have first. So we really started doing an inventory of tools. And that was day one. And there was Dan just whiteboarding everything. But then the next day was, okay, well, there's all these tools, but how are we going to build the house? What else do we need? And it was filling the gaps. And they were the right partner from the beginning because they knew how to leverage data effectively. And that was critical to our success. I knew going in, and so did my boss, that data was the most important thing that I was going to be measured on. I mean, enrollment doesn't just happen by itself. So I think the best part of the partnership is that I get this like fractional data squad. I get this data squad of individuals, like sometimes 5 people are on the phone and they all have different specialties, but I don't have to pay all these FTEs to get that expertise. So that was really our approach. Like, we really needed a data partner and they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. And I feel like I've just been hearing more institutions in higher ed where I think it maybe is a little bit more normalized outside of it. And certainly this is just kind of the story of higher ed, I guess, in general. But the idea of recognizing very explicit needs for like fractional, whether it's like a, marketing person, IT, whatever it might be, but just that idea of like, we know we need additional capacity. We know we need it in this particular area. How can we get that? And even just sort of like, over the past several years, the openness of institutional leaders to say like, we want to bring in that outside perspective, help us identify kind of where we are, our blind spots, and what do we need to do to get to where we want to be. Because I think I just feel like in my even, short stint so far in higher ed, I feel like that has been a bit of a paradigm shift where we finally kind of crossed that watershed of really welcoming and embracing, external partners to be kind of really integrated into, even that sort of fractional place and everything. So it's really great, and really great also to have for this episode. We're getting both sides of the coin. So I'll present this question to you, Dan, to talk about kind of, from your perspective, like how you approach this partnership, this one in particular, and I guess just sort of like the tools, the technology and things that were like helpful, for you to leverage to help Augusta like impact their student life cycle.
Yeah. So just as Cristina said, the very first step was just getting everybody to look at the same picture. I think the student life cycle it's so long, right? You go from marketing and awareness to enrollment and then the learning experience. And when you really think about the different technologies that kind of support that on that life cycle, that map becomes really big really quickly. So just as Cristina said, the very first step, actually the first day I met Cristina in person, we sat down with the team and our whole goal was to get everybody to look at the same picture. And so we mapped out with the whiteboard, the website and how that flows into the CRM system, the different marketing tools, the Slate application, the payment systems, the integration systems, the student information system, the advising tools, the student portal. And I mean, that's just the short list of technologies. And so I think when we started our partnership with Augusta University Online, it really was a blank slate in terms of what the vision for it could be. But we also knew that we had this kind of toolbox, and we also needed to work within the confines of the technology ecosystem that the university already had. So day one was about getting everybody on the same page in terms of like, how does it work today? And the second day was really about creating the vision for what Augusta University Online would look like from a data, from a technology, from a process standpoint. And that little napkin sketch really became the blueprint for charting out the future. And I think kind of starting with that shared vision is really what set us off on the right trajectory in order to kind of bring everything together to be able to enable Cristina and the team to do what they needed to do to serve that new online population.
I guess so like a very brief follow-up, like what I'm hearing is like it's less about saying like, well, you need to do these things this one way and whatever, like that idea that you were kind of coming in wanting to learn where they were and sort of seek out the opportunities that would enable their unique vision. Because I think in my head, it is maybe that like sometimes these things could work out where it's like, well, we have our one way that we do things. And if you don't line up with that, then you're going to see where like, well, you need to do all these things to do it our way and whatever. Like, I guess I'm getting the impression that it was trying to like look at their tech stack and everything else and just sort of be like, all right, well, we're connecting from A to B and this is what you need to do kind of unique to you to get to where you want to be versus it being one simple way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think I've done at this point hundreds of these little napkin sketches with universities, and I call them fingerprints because I've never seen two universities look the same way. I mean, even when you think of a university, even like Augusta, there's the undergraduate population, but then there's the graduate, and now there's going to be an online population, and the technology is always changing. There's always a new system being introduced or one being replaced or one being upgraded. And I think what really helped Augusta University Online in this partnership was really kind of coming to the broader Augusta stakeholders, basically saying, we understand your processes. We're trying to fit in. We don't want to disrupt. We want to enable, but then also being able to communicate to them. And here's our plan for Augusta University Online. And so there was always this kind of tie back to the main university system. And I just think that really, really set us up to take advantage of some of the existing processes that were working, but also gave us a mechanism for prioritizing what did we need to do next to really enable the use cases that Cristina and the team were going to need to make the unit a successful endeavor. And that was really, I think the starting place, like where we started, was just such a key part to success. I think in higher education, we kind of over-index on technology, where there's this like technology, we just need this one new application that's going to solve everything. And I'm a believer in technology, but it's really, you have to look at that in the ecosystem. You have to understand where it fits. And then you have to be able to communicate to others how that's going to impact their processes or how they can leverage like the new capabilities that Augusta University Online was going to enable.
Yeah, and I guess just to kind of get your perspective on this too, that follow-up, Cristina, like, because that's where my mind was going, exactly kind of what you're talking about, Dan, is the idea of like, tech stacks, like certainly in the past couple of years, certainly since the pandemic, like I think have expanded a lot, and just the difficulty, I think at this juncture, probably for most institutions of like, oh, we need to like onboard a bunch of new tools or swap things or this and that, and the other, like that idea of part of the customization is examining what you have and maximizing the potential of your existing tech stack and having it work better together. Like, were some of those, I guess, some of the tactical pieces of sort of like assessing where you are and how you can get to where you want to be by leveraging the existing tools, for example, like the digital tools that you already had on hand?
Absolutely. And I had a lot of conversations already with stakeholders at Augusta University. And we weren't there to create a new university. We were there to augment and increment with online enrollments. So they already had something that was working in terms of an application system, in terms of their, banner, et cetera. Really, what I was looking for is, does all of this and integrated work for me and my needs? Because we really needed to stand something up quickly. And so it was just a really good, quick litmus test on what we needed to happen and how quickly we needed to happen. We did not want to disrupt anything or bring in new technologies. We actually went in with the idea of Collegis, can we make it work with this? And if we can't, please let us know. because then we won't be a success. But really, we were really impressed with all the technologies that we had. It was the first time that I was also learning all the technologies that we had. So it was a really big learning experience. And I'd like to say that Dan is being really modest by saying that it's a napkin sketch. I mean, it was a work of art. It was really a work of art. Like when we showed this to other individuals, they're like, wow, it put in one image everything that we had from a technology perspective. It was impressive.
I appreciate that, Cristina. It was a ton of fun to make. And I think what was like, it's why I love doing these kind of whiteboarding exercise, because I mean, they're really collaborative, but again, I think it gets everybody looking at the problem in the same way. And I think that's something we don't appreciate enough in higher education, because we're usually stuck in a function, right? You're in marketing or enrollment, or you're in advising, or you're in learning, or you're in IT. And I think we all have this kind of unique perspective on how the university systems work. And I think this exercise really kind of forced us to look at what do we have, but also it helped us understand the challenges we were going to run up against. And so something I learned actually through this process with Augusta is there are some really specific state level requirements when it comes to enrollment that I remember everybody in the room going, oh, I didn't realize that, or, oh, we're going to need to account for that. So just that inventory, I mean, it really is. I mean, you would never well, maybe some people would. I certainly wouldn't tear apart my kitchen with a plan to build a new one without having that blueprint. Like, you have to have a plan. And I think it's really easy to get into this kind of mindset. Again, this kind of over-index on technology where, oh, if we just bring in this one tool, it's going to solve all these things. Well, no, it's not. And there are always going to be opportunities for better integrations and better data and better connections. And you have to understand that before you can really build a plan. And sometimes the plan that you want, or the kitchen that you dream of, might not be possible because the plumbing is on the wrong side of the room. Well, that's fine. Now we need to accommodate that. And so I think it really just kind of gave us this level playing field of like this kind of mutual understanding on all sides of the table. And then it really allowed us to solidify that plan to set us up for success later.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to add, if I can, Dustin, what was interesting as well is, how do you define a CRM? Because everybody, at the end of the day, when you look at this, this whiteboarding and this drawing, if you will, piece of art, actually, it's like, well, we have a CRM, and it's like everything can be labeled a CRM. Your student success platform is part CRM. Your application portal is part CRM. And so we started calling it a life cycle CRM. You may have little CRMs, if you want to call them, bits and parts of CRMs, but it was really looking at the integration of it so that the student could also go through it just seamlessly. From the minute that they're a lead and they raise their hand all the way to when they graduate. I mean, the entire technology path that they go through is the CRM. You're managing the relationship with them throughout every piece of technology.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great perspective. And I think the benefit of getting like you're saying, like, you're bringing all these constituents and stakeholders and colleagues together just from your own institution, but then also having like the mix of expertise and just, outside perspective, or, sort of an objective lens, somebody to kind of like moderate, the conversation, and to kind of, do the work of art mapping and everything. Like, I think that is just, was like, all right, I'm in that role. Like, you all, talk about what you do and how you do it, the tools you use and all that. I'm going to try to like connect the dots and just like empowering people to kind of do that and sort of have that time and space together. And I think even to make sure, I think I fully capture sort of like, because I think obviously like the end outcome was sort of improving, enhancing, expanding Augusta University Online, but you were kind of enabling that through the DIY plus kind of initiative and everything. So I think just to put a finer point on that component of it, Cristina, if you want to just really briefly say, like, why was that sort of like a enabler of achieving your goals of what you envisioned for, Augusta University Online?
So one of the things that we didn't want to do was outsource to an OPM fully. So we intentionally partnered with vendors, but fee for service. So I wanted to we were 3 individuals that needed to launch this with the support of the university and lots of departments in the university. But obviously, we couldn't rely on other departments to do our recruitment, our marketing, because they had their hands full with their daily operations. So we had to go out and essentially have vendors do that work for us. But again, it was not the OPM model. So it was, yes, your DIY plus. And then eventually we were going to bring it as like a rent to own model, meaning we were going to rent some of these services for a while and then bring them in. Like our goal eventually is to bring in our recruitment in-house. Marketing is a different story. We'll keep that out. And data enablement also will keep that outside. Just because going back to the talent, it would be so hard to have all that talent in one FTE the way that it is fractionalized right now with Collegis. But yes, so the goal was to create an internal OPM so that we could service our colleges and our schools and work with outside vendors to get that expertise.
Want to know what AI-powered, people-focused really looks like? The 2025 Engage Summit will show you how AI transforms engagement without losing the human touch. Join us June 24th through 25th in Charlotte for actionable insights, hands-on demos, and transformative strategies. Enrollify listeners save $50 with code Enrollify50. Sign up now at engage.element451.com. Great. Cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure because I appreciate explaining that because I think that is like I have a background with OPMs and everything, and I kind of wanted to like capture that because I think, again, like that idea of with our conversation here, I feel like we're getting a really comprehensive sort of full picture of like, from that ideation kind of process in the beginning that you're talking about over the course of the 2 days, that sort of manifested in this like mechanism to be an internal OPM to then achieve sort of the outcome of, enhancing and expanding your online offerings across the institution. So I'll stick with you, Cristina, for this of just to say, any anecdotes or impact of how you've hit like marketing, enrollment, like any and all kind of goals, I guess, that you'd want to share of like what has that sort of, version of Augusta University Online kind of looked like as of right now? Like what have you reached so far? And then we'll also kind of start to look towards the horizon next. But we'll start the present moment. What have you achieved so far?
So I'm so lucky to say that we've knocked it out of the park. I mean, we just had our 4th intake, spring 2025, and just in 4 terms, we're almost at 1,000 students just in 4 terms. So that's a year and a half. So it's been an incredible trajectory, but quite honestly, it put a significant pressure on our faculty. So we exceeded our goals so much that we had to start planning for sections that we didn't think we were going to have to plan for. So this rapid growth, it reinforced the critical need for accurate forecasting. And then accurate forecasting is obviously done through data. So Collegis played a key role in this by helping us develop a forecasting and budget allocation tool where it allows me to predict the future intake contributions with a high level of accuracy. So it wasn't just about understanding my ROI, which we all want to do. It was more about understanding when that dollar would generate returns. So, for example, when Collegis says the money that you're spending right now, you're always looking to the next intake, right? So you're spending your money in spring so that you get this great crop in fall, right? Lots of students in fall. But they're like, did you know that your spring money is also already fueling your spring intake for the next year? So it was really understanding when those dollars were going to, give us a return. So I'm happy to say also that this spring was the first time that we achieved near perfection in terms of forecast accuracy. We were at -2%. I know negative sounds horrible, but that doesn't mean that we didn't grow. We actually grew 40% spring over spring, so year over year. What was important was to really get to that forecast accuracy so that we don't put pressure on other departments, particularly academic pressures on our faculty and on our ability to provide the students with the sections that they need.
I think that's such a crucial piece before I hop over you, Dan, like the idea of like, because in my mind, I mean, it's one of those pieces that's like, it's maybe not the most like sexy, flashy kind of thing, whatever, but the idea of like, course section forecasting. It's like, but that is like such a like foundational, fundamental, important piece because I've seen on either side the repercussions that you're talking about of grossly overestimating, like, oh yeah, we're going to need 20 sections of this course, and like you hired like adjunct faculty or whatever, and then you're being like, oops, sorry, like I know you're planning on spending the next 16 weeks of your life teaching this course, but like we don't need you, however many people, or that you'd have to like sacrifice maybe like the faculty experience and or the student experience by like cramming a bunch of people into course sections, because it's just like, oh my gosh, we had twice as many students trying to enroll in this one course than we had anticipated however many months ago. So I think that is like such a good kind of tactical piece of like, obviously you're saying like, hey, yeah, like we're doing great in terms of like getting increased enrollment in our online offerings. Like obviously that's what anybody wants from this, and it's amazing, really amazing that you're achieving that. But like there's a lot of other sort of like collateral, sort of effects of that are, I think, really crucial to be, certainly anticipating, but also just, having somebody kind of along with you for the ride versus just, I think how sometimes like partnerships of this nature might work is that like, well, they did all the sort of flashy, cool, like marketing stuff and, we're getting all this interest and all this. And they're like, okay, good luck. Like, have fun with all these students or whatever. And it's just like, hold on, wait, we have to like recruit faculty and train them and like, all this sort of infrastructure of like registration, whatever else. So like that, I think, again, it's just getting a bit more tactical and really kind of putting a lot of color to this, which I really appreciate. So Dan, I don't know if like just from your perspective, that idea of kind of being that sort of companion along the ride, and how like Cristina was talking about like the idea of certain pieces where it's like, oh yeah, I think we've got that handled. We'll do some of these pieces, but like some of these technical aspects, such as like forecasting or whatever else, like is really important, sort of like more longitudinal to like still be sort of in the mix.
Yeah, you bet. So I look at Cristina as like the star on the stage, and I look at my role and my team's role, the data engineers, the technical analysts who are stitching systems together. They're the stage builders. We're the people who are putting down the flooring so Cristina and the team don't fall through it. When we hoist them up into the air, it's safe and they can fly across the stage. And so I really do look at our team as like the enabler for what Cristina and the team have been able to build at Augusta University Online. I think there have been insights along the way from the data, and like Dustin, I love how you pointed out, like sometimes insights aren't glamorous. It's like we don't have enough, or we don't have where our forecast is telling us this. And so I think sometimes in analytics, we're kind of looking for that magic bullet, that magic insight that's going to like completely revolutionize everything. But I think the reality is a lot more, as you said, a lot more mundane of like, hey, we need more faculty, or we don't have enough, or hey, we need to slow our pacing down. And so, Cristina is really the conductor of this, and it's really arming her to kind of understand, the pitch and how everything sounds together. But it really is an orchestra. It's on all sides. It's an orchestra, and kind of tuning that isn't an easy job. But if there are things that on the data side that we can do to enable Cristina to make those decisions, that's really what we're about and what we're enabling.
I'd also like to add, Dustin, that something unique about my position, I believe, is that I manage both the marketing and the enrollment. So usually that's handled by two different individuals or two different departments. So I am able to, take those both on the same path with the same goals. So that has actually been one of my, in the past few jobs, I wanted both, to be able to handle both marketing and enrollment. Because, marketing and enrollment have a tendency to point fingers at each other. Marketing will say, you're not handling my leads right. And enrollment will say, you're not giving me the right leads. And so I'm able to handle both. And that's also been a lot easier for us to be able to take this as to where it is now as quickly as we have.
I think it also made us, it also kind of gave us a lot of clarity around the use cases that were going to drive value. So we were starting with a blank slate of, what this could look like, but we knew there were things that we knew we had to enable Cristina and the team to do. So things like really basic things, lead attribution, application attribution, which marketing campaigns are driving interest and awareness, and how do we not just understand that awareness, but how do we connect it to the enrollment side? How does an inquiry from this particular campaign or channel move through the funnel? And at the end of the day, serve that prospective student with the information that they're after to make the process as easy as possible. So having Cristina in the role that she was in really made it easy, made it possible for us to define the use cases that were going to allow us to bring these worlds together to get the outcomes that AUO has been able to achieve.
Yeah. And I mean, still feel a little bit like kind of a layperson when it comes to like marketing enrollment stuff. I've been really trying to give myself a crash course, certainly through like interviews here and just some research and learning and connecting with folks. But like, it does feel like what should be the new normal, or where the kind of the trend line is going, is to like have marketing and enrollment efforts very tightly intertwined, whether it's, individuals are sort of wearing both hats or those teams are part of the same department. Because I think anymore, there's like amazing tools out there that can do like a good portion of both, or you should be leveraging tools very thoughtfully and intentionally that can integrate and are designed sort of to be working together, and not at having feeling like there's gaps and pointing of fingers, or sort of like, it kind of goes into like a black box of like, hey, well, we ran all our campaigns and sent all the emails and did this and that, whatever. It's like, whatever you do with them, which again, it's kind of crazy to say, but I know this has been the case. Like you're saying, Cristina, like the idea that like, we're all the same team here. We all work for the same institution, but the idea of just being like, hey, whatever you do with these people, like click the RMI form or whatever, like, go nuts. But, and I guess to stick with you, Dan, on some of the technical piece, because I think all of this, again, that's certainly a trend line, kind of merging of marketing and enrollment. Another trend line we're following a lot and seeing kind of all the permutations of throughout our conversations over this past year plus is, AI and how it's sort of showing up in all the different functional areas. Like that is obviously just becoming one of the primary drivers of digital transformation. Take this as you will. How is AI shaping, your like operations at Collegis, and like how you're kind of working to continue to transform student life cycles?
Yeah. So number one, I would say that you have to make sure that you have a good foundation of data to start. Obviously, like reporting, understanding your funnel, your attribution, your forecasting, like that is a must-have. But what I think AI is doing right now is it's really pushing us to think about data beyond reporting and dashboards. So I think in higher education, we've over-indexed on technology, but we've also kind of over-indexed on this idea of a report. And so when I first started at Collegis, all my conversations were about, how do we collect data or connect this data to drive a better report or a better dashboard? But I think now with AI, I'm hearing things like, how do we use AI and the data we have and the technology and the process to create a more personalized experience? Or how do we enable a learner to self-serve in a way that they couldn't before? And so I think with AI, it's less about aggregate dashboards and more about how can we use this new functionality to help or enable a student or a prospective student on a level we just couldn't do before. And that's what's exciting to me about this kind of AI transformation is it's really creating an opportunity for scalable personalization and enabling learners to do things we've just never been able to do before. So I know that's broad, I know that's general, but I think it's almost shifting the way we're valuing and deploying data. It's less about a data-driven report and more about a data-enabled learning experience or journey. And that's way cooler to me. I love a good dashboard. I love reports. They're very necessary. But I think all of this is just giving us a platform to do things we just couldn't do before.
Yeah. And I think, we're still early days, so I'm almost like skeptical, and people are getting a little too like boisterous about like, AI is going to change the world and everything else. And we're all just going to be able to like kick back and relax. It's going to do everything for us and whatever else. It's like, maybe eventually, not right now, because obviously people are like posting about like hallucinations and everything else. But it's like, yes, it is like a great tool to be, certainly like learning about and playing around with and just like utilizing in what ways feel like are relevant or whatever else, but like not shoehorning in or being over reliant on it, or sort of, not still maybe trusting but verifying, whatever kind of framework or mindset you want to look at. But glad to hear that, you all are kind of seeing the potential and seeing the opportunities and starting to kind of put that together. But as we wind down, I'll present this question to both of you, but I'll start with you, Cristina, just sort of like your advice around sort of like best practices, things to be thinking about as, folks who are listening are developing their own strategies for something that might look like or be kind of emblematic of, your DIY plus approach, or just sort of, the journey you've been on with Augusta University Online, just whatever sort of advice, resources, things to be thinking about, things to be considering. Cristina, we will start with you.
Sure. So I think the most critical component to everything that we've talked about is recognizing that the access to the data is likely going to be the biggest challenge. So in working with Collegis and identifying the technologies, identifying the gaps, seeing how we could build bridges to connect those gaps, the hardest part was accessing the data. And it still continues to be. And it's because data is going to be ever changing. There'll always be new platforms. There'll either be a new report or so data access is the hardest part. Now, with that said, I'm not saying shy away from it because that is a high effort project. It's high effort, but really high reward. Every time I get new data after asking for it for a while, it's amazing what I get out of it. So I just really think that the hardest thing or the biggest challenge is data access. But Dan once told me data isn't a project. It's just not a one-time thing. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. It's ever changing. And it's like a muscle that you have to work on. You have to make it stronger, continuous development, refinement. It's daily maintenance. And it takes a lot of people to do that. Like, I'm not the only one that does that. There's a lot of people on my team at AU Online and AU, as well as the team at Collegis.
I would plus one the data component that Cristina mentioned. Like, I think, at the end of the day, whether you're talking about, personalization or, understanding your pipeline or your return on investment, like that data is the lifeblood of all of that. And increasingly with AI, AI is only as good as the data that you feed it. I will say the other piece of advice I would give and would be just figure, if you're taking that DIY approach, figure out what you have currently. What is the university invested in? What are the gaps? And build a prioritization plan from there. It really amazes me how many different systems and technologies and processes exist at an institution, but I see very few institutions really taking the time to inventory those things. It might happen in a marketing lens, the marketing folks know the marketing tools or the enrollment folks know their enrollment, but no one's taking kind of that broader view and really understanding and inventorying those things. And so I just can't stress enough how important it is to have that shared understanding, a map, a blueprint, a game board, something to ground on. And I use the analogy or metaphor before around the kitchen, right? You wouldn't start a kitchen remodel without a plan. And that's what I would say for the DIY is just understand what you have, understand the constraints, and then build from there. And I think that goes a lot further than trying to, build the plane while you're trying to also fly it.
Yeah. Great advice on both sides there. Because I think, kind of the real talk of data is a ongoing effort. It might get messy and gotta make you want to pull your hair out at times. So it is important. It is necessary. The ongoing maintenance and all that, again, still the sort of necessary infrastructure work that is not going to be most people's cup of tea, I guess. But just recognizing the importance, figure out the best way to approach that, the best partners to do it. And certainly starting even with those audits and inventories and things could really help you to understand better where you might need additional support and capacity and expertise and everything else. Or, so I think no matter where you are in your journey, on developing digital education or, whatever else, anymore, I think doing those evaluations of your tech stack and, how do they integrate or not? And, where is it that you are trying to get to, I think will help to really shine a clear light on what are the ways that you could, build your own internal capacity, leverage the expertise of partners, and, just keep driving forward. And I think this was sort of an undercurrent with what you all are kind of saying too, don't get kind of too bogged down and doing all of that to solely serve your own goals, internally as staff and faculty, just keeping in the back of your mind, the student life cycle and how are students interacting with some of these systems, because some of them are very much in the background, but it is the idea of we can make this work perfectly for us, but it still needs to be, a cohesive, seamless experience for the students.
And that's where silos come from. That's where silos come from, is where you have a unit who says, well, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to do my own thing. And then, years later, you've got a completely different university that just doesn't work together. So I think that's exactly right, Dustin. Exactly right.
Yeah. So we've got the cautionary tale there. We've got a great example of how this can work out to be really effective, really impactful for institutions. And yeah, for me, because again, a lot of my background is in like digital education and more on kind of the student support side. But like, I just love to see the continued sort of proliferation and expansion and enhancement of these sort of online offerings for institutions, because I know it's just I think really important driver to continue creating more access for students and helping institutions achieve kind of their enrollment goals and such. So just really appreciate both of you sharing all that you did, ways to connect with both of you and Augusta and Collegis in the show notes and everything. But just really great conversation. Appreciate both of you giving your time and sharing all of your insights.
Thanks for having us.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.